let's just bring in Matt
Everybody
now. Matt,
baby.
You're taking over, Matt.
The day I've been waiting for, finally.
Kenny's worn me out. Like he wins. Kenny has defeated me today.
Oh, hold on.
He's got websites open. He's got ESPN.com open. It's a wild day. What's up, Matt?
What up? Casey and MG, the show on ESPN 1320 everybody's been waiting for.
The one that people have been calling for.
Are
you up on your paid in full references?
Oh, am I up in my what?
Paid in full references? No, you're shaking your head. No.
Nope.
Have you heard of paid in full?
No.
Nope.
Come on.
All right, Googling it. Hold on.
No. All right. Well,
paid in full. Oh, 2002. Okay, good year.
It's a classic.
Were you born in 2002?
I was born in 94.
Oh, okay.
That's just not much better, according to some people.
Jesse was born in 2002. What was I thinking?
There you go, Jesse.
What was I thinking? I wanted to see if there 6 players. Here's a note on the Kings game last night. 6 players with 15 or more points. That matches the most in a game in team history.
Wow.
Would you have guessed that?
No, I would not have. That's wow.
And they did it against that Pistons team. So great.
Well, that's all right. Like, don't be that
guy. Are you one of those guys?
No, all right. I mean, kinda.
You saw your boy last night. I'm anxious. Let's regroup here. There's a lot to talk to Matt George about. Obviously, the Kings get the win last night. We saw Marvin Bagley. We'll talk to you about some of the issues here on this road trip. Luke Walton's future was called into question yesterday. We'll talk about that. Get Matt George's thoughts here as the Kings head into the final game of this 4-game road trip against the Minnesota Timberwolves. We're going commercial free until the top of the hour when we return here on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. Ooh, I just saw that in the Slack. Would you move De'Aaron for Karl Anthony Towns?
Oh man.
Put that out there to the chatty house. See what y'all think.
Oh, I think I know what my answer is. I just don't want to say it.
Would you move De'Aaron Fox for Karl Anthony Towns?
That's crazy.
Hold on.
Oh man, that's tough. Yeah. I'm with Matt. I don't
boy.
He's got two more years left on his deal. 33.8 next year, 36 million in 23-24.
Damn.
Versus Fox is in year 1 of 5 right now.
Oof.
Wait, what are we talking about?
Elijah just sent us a clip. Did you see that clip of Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards? It shows Karl Anthony Towns just walking back on defense when Anthony Edwards has the ball.
Oh man!
Wow.
I mean, to be fair, Minnesota's down by like 20, and it's in the 4th quarter. Everybody knows that shot's going up. So Cat's screw that. I'm not jogging back. I'm getting back now.
Wow.
This is a good point from Rory. Cat's more talented, but they both have the whole lack of a killer mentality thing. Yeah. We were talking about that the other day with the Jimmy Butler version of the Minnesota Timberwolves.
I'm fascinated by that. That's something that I could watch like a mini 30 for 30 on. Is that version of that Timberwolves team? The only time they happened to make the playoffs recently, and who it was more? Was it more Cat or was it more Wiggins that had kind of that kind of entitlement mentality that
I think it was Cat.
I think it was Karl Anthony Towns. Yeah,
I think so too.
Well, he's wrapped up Wiggins on a number of different occasions after, like, they look like they got love for each other.
Yeah.
But don't worry, Willie Cauley-Stein made Cat work for his 30 or 40 points that he scored in Sacramento that one season. You remember that? You remember Willie post game saying stuff like that?
I don't
Willie.
So there's one.
God bless him. Used to say some wild stuff.
I loved Willie. I still love Willie to this day. But Willie, after Cat had gone off for like 30 or 40 on the Kings, and Willie spent most of the night guarding him. And Willie, we thought was joking, but he was dead serious. Told us after the game that Cat got his, but I made him work for everything that he did tonight, or something. It was totally dead serious.
Oh man, Come on, Willie. And Willie's my guy.
He didn't deserve it. I mean, he did, but he didn't.
I like Willie.
Willie
was actually a really, really solid dude. He was really, really nice dude.
Yeah, he was. His photographer, Yazoo, is the whole. He's 100. He gets 100% of the credit for making my Instagram page pop.
Is he? He took the escalator pic?
He took. There was a stretch where there wasn't a pic on there that wasn't taken by him, and he pushed my account so much. That's the only reason my followers grew the way that they did. Like a lot of the people who they're like photographers, like it was like his work on display that got me that helped my IG page grow.
That's dope.
Yeah, he was 1,000% a social media game changer for me. He is super talented. The first picture he took of me that I posted, I was standing courtside looking at my phone.
I remember it.
When when I posted that picture, I got more likes than I had followers. Because he he pushed it out and he was like, "Yo, I'm working with my man," and it was like, that changed a lot for me, man. I'm indebted to that dude forever. He was a big help for me.
My Instagram game is just terrible.
Instagram's tough, man, because it really is just about how you present those images. I have a hard time now that I don't have Zoo. That's why Kenny and I have been trying to arrange something with John Bull for a while, because we gotta get real pics taken.
Get it popping.
Show off all of KC's shoes for the gram. That helps too, by the way. Like when you use hashtag whatever shoe you're wearing, that's a big help too. Here we go, guys. Hang on. Interesting discussion during the commercial break over on twitch.tv/ESPN1320 and youtube.com/ESPN1320. Jesse had asked us right as we headed into the break, would you consider moving De'Aaron Fox for Karl Anthony Towns? I think a lot of us were talking about the talent of Karl Anthony Towns, and then you start to settle into a couple of realizations there. They both seem to lack that killer instinct. I don't know what type of leader Karl Anthony Towns is, but are we just going to brush over the fact that Karl Anthony Towns is on a team that is equally as bad as the Sacramento Kings, if not worse? Again. Yeah. So at first it was like, oh man, it'd be tough to part with De'Aaron, but Karl Anthony Towns. And then it was like, wait a minute. All of the things that people complain about with De'Aaron Fox, they're all still very present with Karl Anthony Towns. It was just an interesting little commercial break conversation.
It's a trip when you see Cat, because whenever I watch him, he seems like engaged. He seems like somebody that's out there trying to do the things that a leader or a best player on the team is trying to do. Whenever I watch, I don't watch a lot of Timberwolves basketball, but I don't see him being passive or not wanting to take shots or not trying to be the guy in the clutch. But I mean, that's the rap on him right now. So yeah, I don't know. He's an enigma for sure.
I have two distinct memories of watching Willie Cauley-Stein, or sorry, we started talking about Willie Cauley-Stein later. Karl Anthony Towns in Sacramento. One of them is the Willie Cauley-Stein game where he went off for Cat went off for like 30 or almost 40 points, and Willie after the game said he made him work for all 40 of those. That's why Willie was in my brain. The second one was the final day Viager season where the Kings got off to a ridiculously good start. They were running in transition, running everybody out of the gym, and the Kings played the Timberwolves early. And Cat comes out in the third quarter. This is after the halftime break, and the Kings continue to push, and Cat looks absolutely gassed. I don't know if either of you remember this game,
I do remember
I've
that.
never seen an NBA player look so tired. And that was out of halftime. Those are my two distinct memories that I have of seeing Cat in person.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see him tomorrow. We won't see him in person, but the Kings will close out their 4-game road trip against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And boy, 2-2 didn't look good 3 games ago, but it sure doesn't look that bad right now. This hasn't been a great stretch for the Kings. Matt George, obviously, they got the win yesterday. Matt George, of course, host of the Locked On Kings podcast, available on the Odyssey app or wherever you get podcasts from, including Apple, Spotify, and Google Play as well. What stood out to you over the first 3 games of this road trip? And we can include Detroit as well.
Well, what stood out to me in the Detroit game is how bad that Pistons team is. No disrespect to them,
Yeah,
but that team was
very
horrific.
Yeah,
They're gonna get another top 5 pick. Them and the Rockets.
Mhm.
And I don't know if
Back-to-back
that's going to save them. Like, I like Cade Cunningham. He did some good things, and they have some pieces. And I'm a big fan of Dwayne Casey, so I want that team to succeed for Dwayne Casey because I'm still mad for him with how everything ended in Toronto. Because Dwayne Casey basically started that. So I'm a big Dwayne Casey supporter. I want that team to be better than they are, but they looked horrific. The Kings defensively, I thought, picked up the pressure and played physically and aggressively defensively and played with enough action defensively to disrupt the Pistons. And that's what led to them shooting like 20-something% in the first half. They brought that percentage up a little bit, but by that point, the game was over. So, but the biggest takeaway to me during this entire road trip is it's the continuation of a pattern. I did a podcast after the blown 18-point lead in Oklahoma City, and I was frustrated but not surprised. And I've done probably 30 episodes on this topic in the time that I've hosted the Locked On Kings podcast over the last 5 or so years. And it's the Kings playing to their level of competition. And it just, regardless of, and I even asked Luke about it after the game, and there wasn't really an answer that he could have given that would have sufficed to it. He's only been here for 3 years versus all 15. But over this entire time, regardless of coach, regardless of general manager, players, hell, even owner, this team for some reason can't figure out that in order to be good in the NBA, you have to play consistently, regardless of the talent that you're going up against. And to see it continue is not surprising, but it was more frustrating this time because I allowed myself to believe that this team was different. And talent-wise, they should be different. I think this is the most talented Kings team that they've had maybe since 2006, the last time they made the playoffs in just terms of talent on this roster. So my blood was boiling more because I was mad at myself that I allowed myself to think, which I think is part of the problem, that this road trip should have been 3-1 or 4-0 because the Kings still, based off of what we've seen on this road trip, the Kings still haven't earned that to me. Like they haven't. We say they're a tier above, and they should be a tier above teams like Detroit and OKC. And yet, whenever they play a team that's a tier below them, they take a step down a tier, and then whenever they play a tier above them, they take a step up. It's just it's that to me is the most frustrating part of covering Sacramento Kings basketball.
And you know what, Matt, when I hear those things, and you're spot on with the things that have gone on for a number of different years, is I see that they just don't have the leadership to be able to overcome these things. And it's not really a knock on anybody, or maybe it should be a knock. Maybe somebody should take that if they were to hear it, take offense to that, because that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm feeling. They don't have the right type of leadership or any leadership to be out there in the midst of giving up an 18-point lead, and when the game gets to 11, saying no, let's nip this in the bud right now. Let's get our act together. Let's make sure that we get back to the things that got us to this point. And I know a lot of people are thinking coach. I'm not thinking coach. I'm thinking about somebody on that roster, somebody on the court pulling these guys together. And they seem to be lacking that and missing that year after year. And hopefully, there's somebody there that can do that right now. Then they can pick that up and take on that role. But so far, in situations like we had on Friday night, we're just not seeing it.
Kenny, I've always agreed with you on putting that more on the players than I do on the coach. And that's not to give Luke Walton a get out of jail free card, because there are things that stood out to me, even in the Detroit Pistons win. The lack of creativity for De'Aaron Fox, specifically in the half court, the fact that your best player, you can't figure out what to do in half court offensive sets more than set one pick. And if that doesn't work, have him shoot a step back ISO jumper. I mean, every single team in the league, regardless of their talent level, is going under a screen and daring De'Aaron Fox to shoot. And right now, since the shot isn't falling, they're winning that gamble a majority of the time. So that's the kind of stuff that I put on Luke Walton, as well as rotation or coming out of the third quarter flat. But in terms of you're reeling, you're struggling, it wasn't the San Antonio game. It was the Phoenix game. It might've been where during that third quarter collapse, Walton called 3 timeouts during that quarter. And all 3 timeouts, the Kings looked no different. Now, some of that I do put on Walton. Where are the adjustments? But the other, that is like, you got a breath. You went to the bench. Someone step up, get this team to regroup, get back out there, and now execute a little bit. And that is the frustration that I've had with De'Aaron Fox, of that lack of Fox's leadership on the floor. And we know he's a lead by example guy, not a scream and yell guy. But who needs to be that guy? I mean, who can be that guy? Harrison Barnes is another fantastic leader on this team, but that's not the kind of guy that he is. And I mean, I guess you kind of address that a little bit with Tristan Thompson, but half the time Tristan doesn't get into the game. So, and Tyrese Halliburton is another nice guy. Like, I love covering a team of good dudes that are happy to talk to. But sometimes you can tell when that team needs someone on the floor to grab them by the collar of the jersey and say, wake the hell up and do your job. And that's been missing for this team for longer than these last couple seasons.
And you know what, Damian and Matt, and I love HB, I love 40, but when we call Harrison Barnes a leader, I'm not sure he's as much of a leader as he is a role model. And that's the difference. Right?
That's
like
good.
you look at, because he don't say much, but you look at how he carries himself and like, that's what I should do.
Yeah.
Well, the Kings leading somebody to do these things. He's a role model.
The Kings sure as hell try to treat him as a leader, giving him to us in media after every single bad loss, expecting him to say something. I feel every time so bad for Harrison. And it's to the point where he's even admitting, he's like, what more can I say? Like, what more can I point out? It's the same problem. It's the same issue. Until we're consistent in this league, we're not going to be good. Until we stop making these mistakes, we're not going to be good. And I like that Harrison doesn't pull back. But the thing is, Harrison is saying it like this, with this kind of demeanor, versus screaming into a camera, which I don't know if screaming into a camera fires anybody up.
Like I don't know why we so closely associate leadership with screaming. You know what I mean? Like, if you ever have watched a single godforsaken episode of Hard Knocks, all football coaches sound exactly the freaking same to me. Bill O'Brien sounds like Rex Ryan, who sounds like Jason Garrett. They all just talk with different accents and cuss up a storm. There is a difference between those guys and Tony Dungy. Yeah. Tony Dungy doesn't lead that way. Yeah. Tony Dungy won a Super Bowl. Tony Dungy's a Hall of Famer. So like, but we're so, but Tony Dungy is like the one you can point to.
Right.
There aren't a lot of guys that you can point to and say, hey, lead this way or do it this way. Like, we have this perception of what I love your line there, Casey, about leader versus role model, but you can be both. We just have this perception that this team, and I think the true big issue, Matt, is what you were just saying there. Harrison Barnes going to the podium and say, what more can I say? It's the same thing. It's the same mistakes. That's the problem. It's you had a podcast. I think you actually titled the podcast "New Season, Same Problems" or something along those lines.
Same old problems. Yep.
And it's like, so De'Aaron grabbing what, Davion, Buddy, Tristan Thompson by the jersey and saying, hey, we're supposed to do it this way. Like, that's going to fix it. So maybe it will, but like, we sure seem to be hell-bent that De'Aaron Fox raising his voice is going to fix the problem.
I'll only say this about that, because I don't know if it'll fix it either. But what he's been doing ain't fixing it.
That is fair enough.
So are we going to keep doing what you've been doing and be like, well, and all your points are valid. Like, I 100% agree with everything you're saying. But
thank you.
Are people going to be like, well, yelling doesn't solve anything. Well, being quiet isn't solving this. So what are we going to do?
Yeah.
I'm saying, what are we going to do to solve this situation?
Yeah.
And I think the big thing for me is all three of us, anybody who's watched Kings basketball consistently, not just over the last 15 years, over the last 2 or 3, you can see when it starts watching a game. Everybody, and it's part of that wounded kind of identity that a lot of Kings fans have, the expectation of things going wrong. But when Kings fans have like a sixth sense when it comes to momentum is starting to shift and not in our favor type thing. And we can see when it's starting, and we've seen that story before. We've read that book before. We've watched that movie before. So we know that if things are going to unravel, they're going to unravel right now. So either call a timeout, even though it's only been a 2-0 run or a 4-0 run, or somebody recognize it the same way we do on the floor and rally the team together to stop it right then and there. And that team has done that a couple of times, did that a couple of times earlier on in the season. Mainly it was Harrison Barnes, right, who was hitting that big shot during that 5-4 start. Now those big shots haven't come as much. And even with those big shots not coming defensively, the stand is not there. The hold is not there. The effort hasn't been there as much as we saw earlier on in the season. So I think the best way I can address your question, D-Lo, is maybe I don't expect anything to be solved by De'Aaron grabbing a guy by the collar and screaming and yelling. But I would expect, with De'Aaron being here now for 5 seasons, that he would start to recognize that the same way fans recognize that, and the same way coaches recognize that, and everybody sees momentum shifting, and get everybody together to say, we stop it here. And I can't tell you that that's happening or not, but based off of what I've seen and based off of De'Aaron's demeanor and body language and the fact that he really only shows emotion when someone's either talking smack to him or he's pissed off for some reason. Like
you pissed him off last night.
Me?
Wasn't that you? Did you did he give you the one word answer?
He gave me the one word answer when I asked him about
chemistry.
That was Jason Anderson.
Because he just hit Jason with the nah.
But he gave me the exact same answer when after a home game, I can't remember which one it was, I asked him if COVID-19 had any effect on him. And it was a much less sharp and aggressive nah. It was just like a nah, and that's all he said. But this nah had feeling behind it.
Yeah, he just said nah. Yeah. And he almost laughed you off.
He did.
I thought it was a good question. I thought it was a very fair question.
But the thing is, he removed the excuse, which I appreciate, because that was something that I was bringing up on my podcast. Hey, maybe he's still a little winded. Maybe it's still having an effect. He dismissed it like that. I'm like, all right.
We were all trying to make sense of it. We were
absolutely.
we were trying to figure out what it was.
But yeah, the chemistry. I did ask Tyrese though.
That's what. Okay, I knew you asked somebody.
Yeah.
All right.
Now,
I wanted to believe you got the one word answer. I'm disappointed now.
The interesting thing about this, and real quick, we know we're talking Kings basketball, but I got to give some air horns. Shout out to my main man, Gabe Kapler, NL Manager of the Year. Let's go.
There we go. Okay. That's it would have been absolutely idiotic had anybody else gotten it.
That's facts.
This is absolutely would have been absurd.
He's got competition next season now that Bob Melvin's in the NL.
Not worried about Bob Melvin.
What? You should be worried about Bob Melvin. Bob Melvin's a phenomenal manager, and it's
not saying that.
Find you someone
not worried about Bob Melvin
who loves you the way Matt George loves Bob Melvin. You will live happily ever after.
But so about the Kings, the ironic thing about this is we're
Walton winning manager. That never mind.
Oh,
sorry,
wow. That'd be crazy. Oh, that'd be crazy. We talked about leadership, and the discussion naturally morphed into De'Aaron. Nobody originally was like, De'Aaron needs to be a leader. It was just like, somebody needs to be a leader in that locker room. And it just naturally and seamlessly morphed into De'Aaron being a leader. And it goes back to a question that we were posing yesterday. And I'll ask you, Matt, are expectations of De'Aaron Fox just too high? Like, he's a good player. He's not a bad player. He's playing better. As of late, he's not playing at an all-star level. He's not playing at a level of somebody that can carry a franchise. But is that our fault with some of our expectations? I'll talk for myself. I had very high expectations of De'Aaron Fox. Were they too high? Should they be more realistic of, yeah, he's not really an all-star guy, but he's really, really good? Are the expectations too high for him?
I'm going to say no, because to me, that's giving a pass to someone who doesn't want it. Like De'Aaron expects himself to be that good. De'Aaron expects himself to be an all-star. He expects himself to be the face of a team in a city who hasn't made the playoffs for a long time. He wants to be the guy that brings that team back, that puts his jersey up in next to Weber and Divac when it's all said and done, and Stojakovic, and maybe replaces the Piglet statue with a statue of De'Aaron Fox. I'm not saying that's De'Aaron's cheap motivation, but that's his desire here in Sacramento, is to be part of that team. He said it multiple times, like I could go and bring a championship or be a part of a championship team in LA or insert place here, or I could be the guy on the team that brings this team back into the glory days and be kind of immortalized here in Sacramento forever. He knows that. He's aware of that. Again, I don't think that's his chief motivation, but that's kind of how he's romanticized coming here to Sacramento, and he's talked about that for a long time. But to get back to your question, I think if it was just Sacramento and Kings fans and Kings media that were pushing him to be that good, it'd be one thing. But I mean, we've seen these expectations put upon De'Aaron Fox since his rookie season with what he did in the NCAA tournament, how he embarrassed Lonzo Ball in his senior or his final year of college, his only year of college. He needs to be that guy for this team, not just to make the playoffs, but for this team to become that champion. And if he's not capable of being that, I don't think it's because we've put too high of expectations on him or anyone's put too high of expectations on him. It's the fact that he couldn't live up to it, and he wasn't as good as he thought he was, as we all thought that he was. So I think, me personally, I think that's dismissing De'Aaron a little bit too early, and not allowing him to work through a slump like this, which has been absolutely the biggest slump of his career. But in the Detroit game, even though it was against the Pistons, it was probably the best game that we've seen between Fox and Halliburton playing together. I'd like to see that be more consistent against better teams, and we'll have to see if that carries into the Minnesota game. But long-winded answer, Kenny, I think it's a little too early to say something like that, because the Kings still need De'Aaron Fox to be the star and be a leader for this team to actually go somewhere and be something in the next couple of years, unless they trade him away for some kind of superstar splash, which is possible, but I'll believe that trade when I see it.
Not to be confused with a Sacramento splash. You were making a kind of a face earlier, KC, when Matt started to answer that question. Do you disagree with that De'Aaron wants to be, that he wants that he put this as simple as possible? Do you disagree with Matt's assessment that De'Aaron wants all the smoke? Okay, well, you answered. That's fine. That's a strong enough of an answer.
I really do think about it. I think he wants all the smoke, but I hear like his we talked about like some of the testiness with his responses this year. Part of wanting all the smoke is like they're going to come to you and be like, why aren't you putting up 25 a night? You know what I mean? And why are you starting off so slow? And I understand being, frustrated with just your play, or, he's got to deal with questions, multiple times every time a day. I get that, but that's part of the territory. That's part of what comes with it. And maybe this is truly his first time going through something like this on this level. He's always been expected to be a good player and had promise, but hey, have to get into the playoffs. You've shown that you can average 25 a night. We're expecting 25 a night. You've got this contract and things of that nature. Maybe it's his first time going through that, and it's just an adjustment period. You know what I mean? But he, I think he is. I think he wants all that. I really do. I'm not just like sold though. I gotta see it from him. You know what I'm saying? I gotta see a little bit more from him. But I think he wants all the smoke and all this other stuff. I hope that's the case, but I just need to see it.
Matt George, host of the Locked On Kings podcast, with us here on D-Lo and KC. You ready to triple down? Your man Marvin Bagley saw minutes in the game last night.
Had like 2 rebounds, went like 3 of something. Yeah. Great. Cool. I'm glad he tried out for the Detroit Pistons last night. That was pretty cool.
You are so bitter towards Marvin Bagley.
No, I'm not. I'm bitter towards my music career flopping because of Marvin Bagley.
Yes, it was because of Marvin Bagley. That's 100% why.
All he had to do was feature me, and I would have been there. Like I threw the lob, and very much like his basketball career, he hasn't been able to throw it down. So
Wow. Okay.
No.
Well, I was going to ask you what you thought. Okay, let me.
It was good to see him. It was good to see him play.
Oh, goodness.
Interesting.
I hate to see what your response would have been if it had been bad to see him.
It's interesting that he came into the game when the Kings were leading and not losing at the end of the game. But hey, first quarter versus fourth quarter, very big difference.
Boy, let me ask you this. What did you make of Luke Walton's explanation about we needed rebounding?
Yeah.
Because if memory serves me correctly, you asked Luke Walton earlier this year about if Marvin Bagley could help the team rebounding. And I think you asked the second question and he ignored the first one, answered the second one, and they just moved on to someone else. And he never really addressed Marvin Bagley. But what did you think of his explanation that, well, we needed rebounding and we needed to play big?
Well, I asked the question for him to explain why Marvin played, and I was not surprised by the answer at all. It makes sense. Like, Marvin Bagley theoretically should be a better rebounder than Mo Harkless and Terrence Davis. And I mean, I don't have his numbers in front of me. I think he only had like a couple rebounds in the 10 minutes or so that he played, which is not great.
That's he did. He had I think it was 2. Where is Marvin? There he is. I'm sorry. He had 3 rebounds and he played 17 minutes last night.
Yeah. So 3 rebounds in 17 minutes, Marvin, Jesus, in 17 minutes, you should be rebound wise, 6, 7, 8. And that's where you start flirting with that double. Cause we all know that you could score, but he didn't do much of that either. Regardless, it's his first game playing in a long time. So I'm not going to read too far into anything statistically, but logically it makes sense that Marvin would help this team rebound. But I mean, I didn't necessarily see it. I think, and this is maybe Mr. Conspiracy Theorist or trying to read too far into things and making things more romanticized than they actually are. To me, it's not a coincidence that the Detroit Pistons are the team that are reportedly interested in Marvin, and the first game that Marvin plays is against the Detroit Pistons. I don't think that's a coincidence. It could be, and if so, great, fine, whatever. That's what I read more into it is, Marvin's in the game.
Showcase. You thought it was a showcase.
Yeah, because I think Marvin, with how bad that Pistons team is, I think Marvin could go to that team tomorrow, start with that team, average a double-double. It would be on a bad team. Some of Kings fandom would freak out because he'd be putting up numbers on a garbage team because they'd give him all the leash on the planet to play with Cade Cunningham, assume that he's stays healthy. I think Marvin would average a double-double and put up good numbers on that Detroit Pistons team. It wouldn't result in any wins or anything like that. But I see why Detroit has interest in Marvin, because they have very little depth at that position, the 4 or 5 spot. And Marvin, I think, could help that team, and that team could help Marvin get another contract. So it doesn't surprise me that there's potential mutual interest there.
A lot of people have brought the showcase up. I even heard a Drake bar about it earlier. But
yeah, boy, we even got Marvin off the bench for the showcase. Whoa.
Kenny's not bad. It's really not bad. I'm impressed that. Is that all truly off the top of the dome? Because if it is, I'm very impressed.
I don't freestyle. But I write bars.
Okay, so it's written. All right, so now I feel like it's a little bit worse. It's still better than everything I can do.
The gist of two things: the Drake bar, Marvin Bagley showcase. A lot of people have said that. Oh, everybody read Mark Stein's report. We know what this is. Has anybody just thought for a second, hey, what if it went wrong?
Who cares?
What if you're has anybody thought you've got by all accounts, one team interested? Oh, we're going to showcase him because the general manager's here. Has anybody thought about, what if he had gone out and he didn't have a great game? I don't think it was awful. It wasn't good, but dude hasn't played in a month. Whatever. I don't give it much thought. It's just okay, we're showcasing him. What if he's 0 for 9? He's falling all over the floor, and then he leaves with a sore hamstring. There is a flip side. to this whole to this whole Marvin Bagley showcase. It could have easily have just gone bad for them had that been the idea. What I think it was, my conspiracy theory, Matthew, was this was Luke's way of saying we're good. The Phoenix situation is behind us. We're good. Called his number. He got up. He came in and played. It was a good situation for him to get out there and play ball. We've put this behind us as Luke to Marvin, and we put this behind us as Marvin Bagley to the Sacramento Kings.
Ooh, that's an interesting wrinkle. Luke extends the olive branch on the same day that he's on the hot seat. I like that angle. I'm gonna run with that now. I'm team D'Lo on that. That's more entertaining than Marvin trying out for the Detroit Pistons. I will say the one thing that I was looking for the most in Marvin's minutes is how does he look defensively? And he wasn't great. It's Marvin Bagley, but he didn't look lost. And I thought he made a couple good plays. He had a strip on, I think it was Jeremy Grant, who was aggressively attacking the basket. And he and De'Aaron, I think, or Davion both split like a strip. But if Davion wasn't there, Bagley would have gotten it completely. Like he made the right read. He made the right move. So defensively, Marvin didn't look absolutely lost for someone who's only played 2 games this season with a team who's tried to revamp defensively. So I give him that credit. That's the biggest thing that stood out to me in Marvin's game.
I was really surprised to see him play. And Damien, I don't know, man. I don't know if that was some kind of olive branch. I lean more towards a showcase, which is kind of weird because like I mentioned before, what are we showcasing? They have League Pass. They got synergy.
Yeah.
They can watch that he's still alive and he's not injured. Like, we don't need to play him. And to your other point, what if it goes bad? What if he gets hurt? What if he plays terrible? So there's no need to do that. That would fly in the face of a showcase. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't think everything was all good. I don't think there's an olive branch.
But what if it goes bad? Like his value is already such trash. You're not getting anything good from the Detroit Pistons anyway. So if it goes bad, okay, fine. And then I think James Ham has told you guys and said on your guys' show that the Kings are not just going to give Marvin Bagley away for garbage anyway, because contractually his money on the books right now can be used to facilitate like a higher money deal.
That's it. The value of his contract, and this is a horrible thing to say, and my sincerest apologies to every professional athlete ever, but the value of his contract is more valuable than him as a player. And that's like teams will froth at the mouth at $11 million coming off of their cap next year if they can move on from their rebuilding team, or if something go, I'm not I'm not going to spark the Kevin Love talks, but Cleveland's got some bad news. Cleveland has been playing way above anybody's expectations, and now they got Evan Mobley out for the next, is it like four weeks or so? Like he's out for a little period of time here.
Soon, young fella.
Things go south with them. Those are the types of situations that you watch for, like a team that might be overachieving, and then all of a sudden something goes south. You recognize, okay, we're not going to be able to pull it together this year. Maybe we can shed some cap here in February. And there's a player with some legs who could help Sacramento when all of a sudden that $11 million comes in handy. Again, I know that's a terrible way to talk about a person, but the value of his contract is very high, and it's very attractive to teams in February.
Yeah, and I think that's the main reason for the Kings to twiddle their thumbs. And in the end, too, if you're not able to find a deal for him, which I actually think is more than likely, if you're not able to move him at the trade deadline, like his qualifying offer is going to go down to the $7 million or is cut in half to whatever it is. The Kings still aren't going to issue it. He's going to go and test unrestricted free agency and maybe get 3, 4, max of 5, and the Kings just kind of wipe their hands of it and are done. This is one of those situations where you don't mind a top pick walking and leaving for nothing. It still sucks, all things considered. The entire Marvin Bagley saga and being a number 2 pick and all that still sucks, but the ending is easier than other endings have been in the past. Certainly easier than like letting Bogey walk or other talent that has walked from Sacramento in recent history. So,
yeah. Matt, what was your initial reaction or your feelings on the Luke Walton story that came out, the Champs put out yesterday morning?
So I talked about this on my pod yesterday. I wasn't surprised at all. To me, it legitimized it more because Sam Amick and Shams put it out, and Sam is in terms of national reporters, we all know Sam is as closely knitted with the Kings as you could possibly be from a national perspective. Now, of course, our local reporters are just as close knitted, and sometimes I would like them to get stories like this, but it is what it is. But to me, it was like, okay, it was like reading a report that the sky is blue or that water is wet. Like, to me, this was writing on the wall, and I think to most Kings fans, this was writing on the wall. Or this was already known news. We've been talking on this show last offseason. Like, if Luke Walton doesn't get this team to the playoffs, he's not coming back next year. He's not coming back for a lame duck year. If he does, he may get another contract. He probably does get another contract, and this is really his last major shot, I think, at being an NBA head coach. I think he'll get on the bench somewhere as an assistant, but I think this is his last real shot as an NBA head coach. But I also said if at any point this Kings team goes on a losing streak, even remotely close to 9, that might be how the axe falls immediately. That being said, as unsurprising as it was, I'm still on I don't think it's the right move. And I have kind of 2 defenses for that. The first one being the Kings have been a revolving door of head coaches for years, and they've struggled to establish a culture and any kind of consistency because of that. Now, I'm not saying that you just put up with incompetence for the sake of putting up with incompetence, for even if it's financial reasons or anything like that. Like, my thing is, if the Kings are just looking for a change, if things aren't working and the Kings are looking for a change to spark this team to try and salvage something this season, making the move to fire your head coach and really promote Alvin Gentry is how it would happen. I think we all believe that's how it would happen. To me, that's the wrong move to make. Now, if you firmly believe that Luke Walton is the problem and Alvin Gentry could get this team right, similar to how the Atlanta Hawks turned around last season, if you truly believe that, then yeah, you make that move, fire him midseason or fire him early in the season. I don't care. But just to change things up, I think is the wrong move. And then I guess my second overall defense towards this is, like we've already discussed, Kenny, is I don't think that Luke is the biggest problem with this Kings team. I don't think he's necessarily been the solution. I don't know whether he can be the solution here in Sacramento, but I don't believe that firing Luke Walton today or tomorrow or in a month fixes this team. Like, the Atlanta Hawks turnaround of last season does not happen here in Sacramento, in my opinion, even with how talented this roster is. There's nobody walking through that door that's really going to change it. I respect Alvin Gentry a ton. Love Doug Christie on that coaching staff. They're not getting this team to suddenly buy into where they're not buying into to Luke Walton, because we know this roster likes playing for Luke Walton. That's why he kept his job this offseason in the first place. And it would be really frustrating if the Kings had an entire offseason to make this move. They commit to the guy, and then 14, 15 games into the season, they take away that commitment, and it just would look bad all the way around. So I am pro keep Luke Walton for the remainder of the season, unless this team completely falls apart.
What do you think, Matt? We got a couple minutes left. Our man Chimezie Metu starting
Freeport.
Mo Harkless.
I'm just a Chimezie Metu fan, as we all are. So, and he's done.
We wouldn't let you on the show if you weren't.
That's true.
Facts.
He's done a significantly better job spacing the floor, which I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing De'Aaron go to Chimezie a lot when he attacks the basket. So I've liked what Chimezie has brought. I also do agree, though, with the assessment that if Chimezie Metu is your starting 4, that you have a problem at the 4 spot. Right. And like, Chimezie, I think, should be absolutely in the rotation, should be getting minutes, but starting minutes and being a starter on a team that has playoff expectations, yikes. And I'm not willing to put so much blame on Mo Harkless. We've talked before on how I want more offense out of Mo Harkless, but defensively he fills a role. Kenny, I think you've brought that point up very clearly. So I know what Mo Harkless brings. So I'm not saying that, or I don't believe that replacing Mo Harkless was going to fix this Kings team at any point. I like what Chimezie brings, but the Kings need help at that 4 spot. And I expect them to try and aggressively address that this upcoming trade deadline with either a 4 unavailable star 4 that becomes available, or if you want to reignite the Ben Simmons aggression, because Ben can play the 4. You move what you guys love. You move Harrison Barnes to the 4 and bring in another 3 and try and figure that out. I don't know. I think those are better options than Chimezie Metu for the long term, but short term, like, it's not a massive drop off. I think he's doing just fine, and I'm happy to see him playing.
Yeah. Freeport, we love you, man.
Yeah, we are hashtag Metu guys here. You think they win tomorrow?
I don't know.
It's like the worst question you could ask someone who covers the Kings. Like,
if I feel more confident in the Kings when they play a good team. So the Kings have a ridiculously tough stretch coming up now after this 4-game road trip ends. It starts with the Raptors, and then it's like Clippers twice and Lakers and blah, blah, blah. I have more confidence for them in that stretch than I do during this 4-game road trip that they're on. So
put them against the Rams. Put them against the Rams tomorrow night.
There you
go. See what happens. Matt George, host of the Locked On Kings podcast, joins us every Tuesday here. Matt, we appreciate you.